If I had to describe the show Riverdale, I would have to call it a Hot Topic toilet mistake. Except for the occasional cool lighting or interesting editing choice, every single decision in the show was the wrong one. Now everyone has their own opinions about the show and why it's bad, or at the very least why it's just mediocre and not very memorable. Some say it's the acting, others say it's the writing. Mother's Basement did a phenomenal breakdown of why the show suffers from its unbelievable mischaracterization. I'm not saying any of those reviewers are wrong, but I feel that there's something at the base of Riverdale that makes this show a steaming train wreck from its inception. Now, I'm not going to break down the show scene for scene a la yourmoviesucks.org with The Walking Dead, but I am going to discuss some major spoilers and some triggering info, so here are the trigger warnings. Let's do it. So the premise of this show is that our beloved Archie characters have found themselves in the center of a murder mystery. So, right off the bat, hopes were high. That's a pretty cool idea. Characters you already love put into a high-stakes situation, either week to week or something overarching, is a great idea. And an interesting idea, because Archie comics are so PG and goofy. This would be like if the town of Pawnee from Parks and Rec had to uncover a Twin Peaks-style murder mystery, or say, Murder on the Hogwarts Express, where someone kills the candy lady, and there were only 12 people in the cart where she was killed, and crap, now I kinda want that. So, how do they frame this narrative? Again, with something that deviates from the source material. Our lovable Jughead is now a moody, bookish nerd who wants to be a writer, and his narration guides us through the events of the story. It turns out to be poorly executed, but still, I think it was an interesting idea. This show does have some ideas to praise, but that's not why we're here. We're here to discuss why, in my opinion, the show fails to deliver what it set out to accomplish. Everything is either too much or too little.
Oh my god.
What?
Game changer. Archie got hot!
So let's start with the casting, which is the least of this show's problems, but I feel still needs to be addressed. Now, I don't have a tremendous problem with actors in their 20s playing high schoolers. I think that sometimes, as an artist, it helps to approach a character from a place of later wisdom, and someone who's been out of high school for even a little while could give honesty and earnesty to a performance of someone less mature. I also don't have a problem with petite actresses or overly buff actors. I have a problem with an industry that deems an actor's abilities as a lesser factor than their bodies, but that's another story for another day. What I have a problem with is this show's insistence on making everyone 1000% bangable, to the point where this bitch is played by an actress my age, and the actor for a 15-year-old looks like fucking Thor. Veronica is rich, so how should we dress her? Believably, like a teen attending an American public school where scoop necks are ground for suspension? No, let's dress her like a fucking 30-year-old lawyer on her way to defend herself in her own divorce case. If anything, the physicality of the characters is a small part of how this show treats these characters. They have the crime-solving skills of adults, the sexual autonomy of adults, and the wardrobe of adults. But anytime the show wants to create drama, they chalk up character actions to, well, teenagers, am I right? Different examples of this show's lack of logic, lack of understanding in teenagers, and need to be extra can be found in this stupid-ass episode where it's Jughead's birthday. Now, putting aside the lack of logic about how, in the same scene, Betty asks Archie why he didn't tell her it was Jughead's birthday, and then says, just like old times, because, oh yeah, the three of them grew up together, so why wouldn't she know that it was Jughead's birthday and that he hates his birthday? Anyways, my parents are meeting to finalize their divorce, which, if I had any brains, I would know was coming. Probably because my mom doesn't fucking live here, so I'm just gonna get drunk for no reason at all and no prompting, and just, there's alcohol here, so... That wasn't my edit, by the way. He just calmly went straight from the phone to booze. Their party gets interrupted by Cheryl being a shit and inviting 10,000 high schoolers to an impromptu raging kegger. Now listen, I know that movies continue to perpetuate things that maybe happen to writers of a certain generation but really don't apply to today's youth, but you're trying to tell me that in a tiny town where everybody knows everybody and people are especially looking out for the teenagers because one of their peers was fucking murdered, shouldn't there be like a reasonable explanation as to how anyone got this much booze? Nah, any 14-year-old can get enough alcohol for 15,000 people once the redheaded ice queen demands it. This doesn't happen. I was a teenager less than a decade ago, and for that matter going to a school with a bunch of fucking rich kids that did go overboard occasionally. But a party of this scale and this much booze does not happen among high school sophomores. Maybe inside like a barn in the middle of nowhere in Kansas, some place where people won't hear the thumping music or be able to look through their curtains and see half-naked idiots grinding on each other, but not in a cookie-cutter white neighborhood where the houses are this close to one another. The only good thing about this episode is that that it gives us the greatest scene in cinematic history.
In case you haven't noticed, I'm weird. I'm a weirdo. I don't fit in, and I don't want to fit in. Have you ever seen me without this stupid hat on? That's weird.
But now that we're talking about it, this scene only happened because Betty, again, who has known Jughead since childhood, was inconsiderate and threw him a party that he didn't want because teenagers, am I right? So illogical. And Jughead decides to break up with her because he's weird and she's pretty. That's enough reason for drama, right? Oh, and then Archie gets drunk and has a fight with his ex and then drunk dials his dad, and then I don't know how he gets from here to, Cheryl decides to, so organically, bring some plot points to the foreground with a game of Truth or Dare, which is really just her standing and flattering shots and talking shit. The music is gone. These horny teens stop grinding on each other. Hey everybody, stop having hormones! I need to recap everything that's happened in the season so far! So after she talks shit for like 5 solid minutes and no one stops her for like no reason, this guy, who we'll get back to later, says something more or less kind of insulting about Betty, and completely out of character, Jughead punches him, causing a fight that ends the party. And by the way, how the hell are we supposed to believe that Betty's mom, the neighborhood bitch who is constantly up Betty's ass about why not to associate with Archie for no reason because she hates him, I guess, would not have immediately called the cops and shut this party down? But no, of course not. Women are only crazy when it's convenient for the plot. And then they can be totally relaxed 1 second later. You know women. They're like teenagers. Who knows what they'll do next? Speaking of the Coopers, let's take a gander at these drama llamas. Okay, I'm gonna quickly sum up some of the Coopers' major character contradictions before I delve into their bigger moments of #drama. Ready, go. Betty hides Polly from her parents because they're evil. Betty invites mom and dad to Polly's baby shower because they're not evil. Betty's mom is the town bitch who will do anything for a scoop. Betty writes an article about the true events of Jason's murder, but her mom forbids her to publish it. Betty cries at the thought of her father possibly stealing from a police officer. Betty calmly lets her father explain how and what he stole, and doesn't say anything. The writers can't tell if they want this family to be crazy or not. And anytime they're sane enough to make full sentences, it's just to dump exposition. The Coopers aren't people, they're just a tornado filled with puzzle pieces and babies out of wedlock. All they do is cause drama endlessly because they're crazy. Their personal family drama comes to a head, dissipates, then creates a new, unnecessary head when Dad breaks into the house to grab some files that he stole from a fucking police officer. Betty's mom has a gun and nearly shoots him, and then, like for no reason, they have a calm family discussion where they tell Betty that Cheryl's great-grandpa and her great-grandpa were brothers, making Polly and Jason Blossom's twins incest babies. At this time, Polly had been living with the Blossoms for a while because, she was trying to gather clues to see if they were the ones who killed Jason. So when they're having this conversation, she's not in any immediate danger, but let's burst in the front door at 2 a.m. It'll be so dramatic. Also, let's make a bunch of wild accusations about the Blossoms maybe murdering their son. You know, it's really smart and safe to accuse people of murder when there are no witnesses around. And now, Betty. Sweet, sweet Betty. My favorite member of the gang growing up, I saw myself in her. Even though I was a rich girl like Veronica, I saw Betty's passion, her craftiness, her spirit, and I really admired who she was and how sure of her abilities she was when she was faced with opposition or hardship. So, where did show Betty come from? This scene baffles me. So the setup is this. This hot dude asks Veronica on a date, and she's like, okay, and they make out for a little, and he asks her for a pic, and she's like, okay, and the next day on his social media, there's a picture of her with maple syrup on her face. And apparently that's like a spicy meme in Riverdale, and a way for boys to sexually harass their female peers. Apparently doing this is the jocks' way of saying that they had sex, and it turns out some of the boys on the football team have lied about doing things with multiple girls. So Veronica demands for the picture to be taken down, and he's like, no, so naturally the thing to do is to drug and torture him. So, this is your reaction to sexual harassment? Not even copping a feel in the hallway, but just lying about sexual conquests? As teenage boys are prone to do? I'm not trying to make this into a boys will be boys thing. I fully believe that each crime has its consequences. But these two things are not equal. I mean, seriously, the way that this scene is set up, you would think that he's an actual rapist. But no, it's just dumb pictures and this dumb book where boys keep track of who they've had sex with and make it into a game. Yeah, that's terrible. But this? Was this character originally written to be a rapist, but the powers that be at the network wouldn't allow them to use the R word because it makes people uncomfortable, and rape is kind of a touchy subject to bring up on TV? But even if that were the case, they could have implied what happened and let the audience do the rest. In college, I wrote an essay about the importance of calling rape what it is. It gives legitimacy to a crime and a form of torture and validates the trauma any victim or victims might be having. I originally concluded that it was necessary to call it what it was at all times, but later I amended that statement because sometimes a show can't be blatant due to the show's TV rating. My example for this was an episode of Burn Notice, where a teenage girl is raped, but the characters just say attacked. However, through Fiona's tone while saying that word, and the fact that they call the bad guy a pervert later makes what happened clear. But they don't do that in this show. They just say, oh, he lied about having sex, but this is your response to that? In a show that boasts itself on drama, and that includes drugs, teen drinking, teen sex, teen pregnancy, forced institutionalization, weaponized religion, actual weapons, gunshot wounds, pig's blood smeared on shit for no reason, teen homelessness, breaking and entering, 2 attempted and 1 successful suicide, gang violence, the brutal on-screen murder of a minor, death threats against a minor, statutory rape, implied incest, actual incest, the creepy grandma from Resident Evil 7. You didn't want to include a reasonable purpose for this dramatic of an action. You went with the most PG-rated form of sexual harassment you could come up with, just posting some dumb pictures of maple syrup. I can't even go through Felicity Jones's tag on Tumblr without seeing her face photoshopped onto literal porno. But maple syrup? I'm not even going to get into the show's attempt to, make Betty have some kind of mental disorder because that's just stupid. But she's never this full of rage at anyone else in this show, and people have done a lot worse. She watches Jason be shot in the head by his own father. So what does she do in that scene? Does she fly into a rage? Does she start cutting herself or throwing herself against walls? Does she grab the wig, become Dark Betty, and exact revenge? No, she just sheds one perfect tear and then calmly calls Cheryl. I guess murder's not that big of a deal. But then in this scene where this guy's just walking, she digs her fingernails so hard into her palms that she bleeds. Now here's the thing. This isn't something that I share willy-nilly, but I am a masochist. My brain is a piece of shit who thinks pulling my hair and tearing my skin are good ways to deal with stress. So the other week I was in a stressful work meeting and getting chewed out, and underneath the table I was digging my fingernails into my skin as hard as I could. I started with the palm of one hand with the full force of the thumbnail of the other hand, and when that didn't prove painful enough, I went for my arm with all 4 fingers. I started to get the idea for this review later that day when I realized I had been digging my thumbnail into my palm as hard as I could, and I didn't even break the skin. You can kind of see some pink ridges, but nothing terrible, and even on my arm, where the skin is much thinner, I only managed to tear a little. Human skin is actually pretty tough, trust me on this. It's only legit cutters who bleed, and that's why they have scars that take a long time to heal. I know that this is a really little thing, but it just pisses me off that this show needed to be so ridiculous just to show, oh, Betty is angry. Just point the camera at the actress. Look at her. She's right there. Oh, look, she's acting. Oh, she got paid to be here, to act. That just makes me so mad. Why did they do this? But getting back to the point, this show makes up petty bullshit to make Betty go crazy, and not only does it not make any sense, but the way they show her being crazy makes even less sense. I don't know if there was even any planning about this scene. I think they just wanted this scene and then made up some bullshit to make it happen. This just doesn't... Now, I'm not exactly an expert on writing, but as an avid watcher of things, I do know a thing or two about what makes sense. If I was the one writing this show, I would have looked at what we had already set up. Veronica is pissed off, and this guy would be an idiot to trust her again. He's also a jackass who's been getting away with loads of shit and would be a complete moron to re-engage with a previous victim, or even a friend of a previous victim. Unless it was on his own turf, or if something was happening where he knew he could strike again and get away with it, like, I don't know, being her legal guardian because she's declared incompetent by the government and no one will believe her? So if I wanted a confession from him, not only would I steal that fucking book instead of just putting it back where I found it and then setting it on fire later for no reason, but I would work on another way of getting evidence. In college, I was being harassed and sent death threats from some boys. So my roommate, who they liked because she had giant tits, hid her phone in her cleavage to record what they said. So if we were going for something like that, sending someone that he trusts to get him talking to reveal his deep dark secret about being a jackass, all these trendy youths would need to do was put their phones on voice memo, hit record, and let this idiot ruin his own life. Or maybe if the show wanted to keep being extra, they could send someone in wearing a pair of these glasses, and the characters could be like in another room watching the thing stream and then post it on Facebook. look, you might say teenagers couldn't afford it, but if you're wearing a $500 outfit to school, I'm pretty sure you can spring for some decent recording equipment. If only you had a man on the inside. Someone Chuck would trust, see as his equal. Maybe even someone on the football Oh yeah. Archie exists. But I guess they forgot about him.